Hello, my name is Eloi. I'm a PhD student from the Alto Acoustics Lab, and I will talk about realistic gramophone noise synthesis using a diffusion model, this paper that I wrote with Vesa and Välimäki. So, yeah. I will start with the motivation. So the task of audio antiquing is about modeling the degradations of historical recordings. So the goal would be to transform some modern track to make it sound older, like it was from the 1920s or from a very old gramophone recording. So this research started on our lab almost 20 years ago, and in a prior work, it was shown that it was possible with some research about how these degradations were originated. It was possible to simulate them using some DSP technique. And yeah, I have some examples from this work. You can listen to some clean music first. Okay. And now let's listen to the old version of it, the antiqued version of it. Okay, well, as you may have heard, I would say that this method was very good at modeling the distortions or the bandwidth limitations, but these clicks, there's something missing there. They are not so realistic, so you can easily identify that they are synthetic clicks. So that's what this work is about. We are trying to make this generation of the clicks and all the noises in a better way, so that they sound more realistic. And we also have some control of how they are generated. So, okay, let's talk about these noises. The noises from the gramophones are surprisingly complex. They may come from a wide variety of sources, because there were basically many things wrong on the recording material and the recording media. So they are composed of many different artifacts. Some of the most recognizable ones are these background hiss, also these clicks that may come from some particles in the surface, or also some low-frequency pulses called thumps that may come from a deep scratch in the disk, some rumble noises which have kind of low-frequency noise that may come from the turntable or some discontinuities there, or many kinds of surface noises, like it could be these disks that maybe for some reason there is more dust in one part of the disk, so you may have here some kind of swishing effect with some kind of periodic structure. So this periodic structure is quite important for our approach, and we will talk about it later. And there's here a sound example. You can listen to one noise. Yeah. So yeah, also these noises are not like unique. They might be very different from one recording to another one. It may vary in a wide variety of ways. And yeah, that's what we want to explore with this method. So we are using a data set that we collected in a previous publication that we were working on denoising. So this data set has more than 2 hours of noise that comes from more than 1,000 different recordings, so it covers a wide variety of different noises. And yeah, in order to generate these noises, we are planning to use some data-driven way of generating them. And for that, we are using a diffusion model. So I don't know how many of you may be familiar with diffusion models. There's no time to do a proper introduction, but I can try to give you some high-level understanding, I guess, or intuition. So just imagine that this blue ink in the glass is the data distribution that you want to model. You can just model it in a direct way, but this is pretty hard. You can do it with GANs, for example, but this is a hard way of doing it. And what you can do otherwise is you can diffuse this data distribution in a way that you know. So in the language of DSP, would mean just adding some noise to it, some Gaussian noise, until you asymptotically you will came up in a distribution. Well, a a prior distribution that you can sample from. So once we have defined this diffusion process, the only thing that we need to do is to learn to reverse it. And if we can learn to reverse it, the problem is solved. Yeah, now let's get into the business of gramophone noises. We have defined this diffusion process that basically maps on gramophone noises to Gaussian noise. This is defined in a continuous way from 0 to 1, but it has to be discretized, because in practice everything has to be discretized. And one easy way to look at it is as a Markov chain. And yeah, some important things about that is that it's quite straightforward to sample to any point in this forward process, because it's just a Gaussian distribution. So the only thing that you need to know are these alpha and sigma parameters. The alpha is just a scaling parameter, and the sigma is the noise variance that you have at each of the steps. So this is basically a design choice. There are some recent words that they're talking about which is the most optimal way of doing that. I learned that this may not be the most optimal way, but that's what we are using here. So basically we're using this variance-preserving parameterization, where the prior distribution is a standard normal, and it's like the variance is kind of preserved between all the stages of the diffusion process. And then the sigma follows this cosine schedule. So yeah, and the other thing is that if you look at the conditional distributions of one step and the previous one, it's also very easy. You just need to have these alpha and sigma parameters that would depend on the noise schedule. And then the most interesting thing is that if we try to reverse it, it can be proven that the reverse conditional distributions are also Gaussian, but they depend on the clean signal X, on the data instance, which we obviously will not have during inference. So one thing that we can do is that we can just train a neural network to denoise the latent, and if we just have a denoised estimate, we can just solve this. I mean, you can just sample from this distribution. And this neural network, we call it here X sub theta, and we will feed to it the noisy signal, and we will also inform it with the noise variance that we have at each time step. And yeah, I will not have time to explain how the sampling works, but yeah, you have to believe that if we know that, if we are able to train that, we are able to sample from Gaussian noise and then reverse the diffusion process and generate some samples from the data distribution. And yeah, let's talk about how this is trained, because it's surprisingly simple. One trick is that instead of learning a denoising model, we train a noise prediction model. So basically, just parameterized in this way, so that we just estimate the noise instant that we have added during training. We can just look at the training loop. It's very simple. Just sample from the dataset, forward diffuse it. Forward diffuse it is straightforward. It's just scaling and adding noise to it. Then we will feed this noisy data to the neural network, which is trained with a simple L2 loss. This neural network is we use a time domain unit, basically using these convolutional blocks are based on stacks of the electric convolutions. It's quite, it's quite common to use this. And then the noise level is embedded to a random Fourier features encoding, which conditions the neural network using these film layers. These film layers are just modulations. And this is a unit. It has this multi-scale structure. We're downsampling at each step. There are the skip connections and residuals. We also added some attention blocks. I think they are not critical, but it seemed to help a little bit the performance. After having explained that, we can just apply unconditional synthesis. We decide to use the sampling rate of 44.1 kilohertz, and then the segment length is equal to the period of the disk, which is around 0.78 seconds. Actually, this has to be discretized in many steps. Some number could be around 20 or 50 steps. The more steps that you have, the better quality you get at the end. And one problem that we see here is that we can only generate one segment, so we can make use that these noises are kind of periodic. Then we can just split this diffusion process, this reverse diffusion process, and at a step we will call tau p, and then generate some noises that are kind of similar but also have some variations. And then this parameter tau p just defines the amount of variations between the periods. The tau p, the closer it is to 0, the more similar it will be. Yeah, you can listen to some noise. These are some of the results. Yeah, so these are noises synthesized with this model. And well, for comparison, I can just play another real one if you forgot. So yeah, okay. And yeah, this is cool, it works, but it's kind of useless because there is no way to condition that. We have no control about which noises we generate. So we came out with this idea of the guided synthesis. This is inspired of an image editing paper. So here we exploit that we kind of know how these noises look like. So we can just synthesize some kind of draft that we call a guide. We can just synthesize that using just filtering white noise or whatever that we want to add here, or we can just use some parametric models of the degradations. So what we do is just forward diffuse this guide to some point in the middle of the diffusion process. And then, since we have not completely destroyed this guide, you can expect that the result will have some similar properties to the guide, but it would optimally be mapped to somewhere close to a training data distribution. So you can expect that the synthesized noise will have some finer details that are more realistic. Yeah. Then they have this tau 0 parameter that defines like a trade-off between realism and faithfulness. So we can expect that if the tau 0 parameter is closer to 0, we will generate something that is closer to the guide, but also there is no room to make it more realistic. But then if the tau 0 parameter is too large, we will generate some realistic noises, but they will be very different to the guide, so we will be quite kind of pointless. And then if you want to generate an endless sound, we can just do this splitting thing and generate different periods, and in the end, you can just concatenate these generated periods. And since we are dealing with noises, we don't have to care if there's a phase mismatch between the concatenations, because it's very simple. And yeah, some more noises. Here I prepared some guides and the results of the guided synthesis. Listen to the first one. And the guided synthesis. So as you can hear, the spectral shape is kind of preserved. It has been modified, but we cannot avoid that. And also the thumbs are still there, so the periodicity is kind of similar. And we can also do something more stationary. This is just filter noise, and then if you apply the guided synthesis, yeah, it applies more texture and more, yeah, it makes it more interesting. Or we can just make something crazier, like this kind of strange noise. And then the synthesized thing, it still preserves this kind of shape that we had before. So we evaluated that. We did a listening test, an A/B listening test, where some listeners had to judge between pairs of signals which one was the real one. So one of both was always a real noise, and the other one was generated with different methods. And then we did some statistical analysis where we compared our estimation of the probability of success of the listeners to find which was the real noise, and it was compared with a random guessing strategy. So the way to look at this is that the closer this number is to 50%, would be that the people just didn't have no clue which was the real or the fake one. So what we found is that the conditional noises were very realistic, almost when the number of time steps was large, almost, yeah, when the people basically had no clue if it was the real one. And also, if we reduced the number of time steps, it was not critical. It still worked pretty well. We also tested the guided synthesis example. And here we varied the tau 0 parameter, and we verified that this hypothesis that the higher this Taurino parameter is, the more unrealistic might the sounds be. But still, we managed to fool a wide proportion of the listeners with that. Yeah, well, one extra thing, I don't know if we don't have much time, but yeah, this is, what we are doing is actually audio texture synthesis. So then we just wanted to try if this method, just without changing anything, would be possible to generate other kinds of noisy textures, something similar. So yeah, I think we don't have to play these ones, but yeah, so it also worked pretty well with rain and applause sounds. And then we can just conclude. We presented a data-driven method to generate gramophone noises. It's based on a diffusion model. We also presented a method to guide this diffusion model to gain some control over the synthesized sound. The results are quite realistic, as proven in the blind listening test. But the main problem is with the diffusion models is that the inference is very slow, so this is far to work on real time. So this is designed to implement it as a non-real time application when you just first generate the noise and you can just tie it to your music somehow. And yeah, I think the main outcome from this work is that diffusion models have a strong potential to be applied for audio texture synthesis. And they offer new degrees of creativity, so it could be a nice future work to explore more in this way and try to generate different kinds of sounds. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for your attention.
All right, thank you. Questions?
Thank you. It's again a request. Can we please listen to the sound texture examples that you have?
Thanks. The rain, yeah. So, well, this was trained in the audio set from Google. This is a data set from YouTube samples, so it doesn't have a very good quality. But yeah, let's first listen to some examples from the data set. Yeah, it doesn't sound very well, right? So, well, these are the synthesized ones. And applause, if you want to. These are the real ones. Yeah, it's hard to tell because actually the data is not so great. It doesn't sound very good, but yeah.
It's more like a fun question. Have you tried giving it something else for the guidance, like vocals or some kind of music?
I mean for the
guidance process?
For the guide?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting thing. Yeah. It's, I don't have any sound example here, but it's quite interesting to add some kind of guide that doesn't have anything to do with the noises. And then, I mean, you don't get anything, something that you will expect. You just get a noisier version of the guide. So, yeah, it's, I mean, for some design thing it would be interesting, I guess. Yeah, it's quite fun.
Just a remark. Something like 5 years ago, we spent really years to take it out from old recordings. You put it in again. Just a joke.
Okay. Last question, I think. Yeah.
So for this, I assume that you're assuming that the noise is uncorrelated to the music, the noise that you used to do this.
That it's additive.
Yeah. So is that how can that be motivated? So is it completely clear that the noise on the recording does not have any correlation to the music on the recording?
Might depend on the noise, I guess. I guess this is not always true, but that's what we assumed for this work. Yeah, I guess. It could be expected that if there are louder passages of music, you could get more noise, maybe. Yeah, but we didn't explore that in this work, I guess, yeah.